Right,
That's right,
okay,
man.
folks, welcome to episode 31 of the Nice and Nasty broadcast. Broadcast? Where did that come from? Podcast, even. And I'm delighted to have a fellow Scotsman. See, he's drinking whiskey because you can't see it because it's podcast, obviously, but I can. Mr. Gordon King. Kingy, how you doing, mate?
Hello, mate. Thanks for having me on. It's good to see you in here for you. It's been a little while since we've had a good old chin wag.
It certainly has. It certainly has. Always find it amusing how in Scotland everybody had a nickname, and it was really imaginative, like Gordon King, Kingy, or
Yeah,
yeah,
just add a Y at the end of
I don't know why. And that was I was funnily enough I was Stuarty as well. So there you go. There you
yeah.
go. So how's life treating you anyway?
Not too bad. Can't complain. You just it's work and family, and in between those
Ah, no.
times, I do my writing for Crash magazine and also the podcast, RGDS podcast. So that
Aye.
pretty much keeps me out of trouble, keeps me out of the pub,
Yeah.
and the right balance so I don't get divorced as well, So
There is that. Yeah. I mean, it's quite funny because I mean, I've been doing making YouTube videos since 2013, and I used to put out. I think I used to put out like almost one video per day, which was just stupid. And that's when I was like with my ex, and now I live with my daughter, and technically I should have all the time in the world, but actually I do less now. I find I don't know much more kind of mean with my time. You know what I mean? It's a weird one.
I think so. You know what? You can do the whole attrition thing and wear people down with podcast overload or YouTube overload. And I'm not saying that necessarily lessens or dilutes your quality of produce,
Hmm.
but if you keep people thirsty for it as well, I think it keeps the listeners more attentive. Things have changed. There's been a paradigm shift, and especially podcasts, because after the whole lockdown situation, a lot of people now work from home. So the whole commute to work and have a podcast companion or an audiobook or the radio or whatever you did
Hmm.
when you
Hmm.
drove, that's long gone. I bet even Spotify to a certain degree is affected by that, not just the podcast numbers. Certainly saw a drop, but what we decided to do ourselves in our own podcast is equally release a video version of the
Yeah.
show, which pretty much has the video clips of the games we're talking about and
Hmm.
maybe other, things we mentioned from the 80s or the 70s or whatever chucked in, so it's still predominantly a podcast, but it gives a visual thing for those now that are perhaps confined to their desktop, so they can have it on a screen and have a bit of visual stimulus rather
Yeah.
than
Yeah.
just the audio side of it. So that's gained numbers as well. So that's good. That's a good thing.
It's interesting you're saying that about, yeah, I mean, obviously there is more people working from home, though if Mr. Musk and Trump have their way, we'll all be back in the office.
Very true.
Yeah, so I mean, I always like just to kind of start off with these things. It's just got a wee kind of flavour for you, just a bit about your background, growing up, and obviously the
Hmm.
introduction to video games and what have you.
Oh, I mean, video games have been in my life forever, simply because growing up in the seaside resort that I am, I still live in today, and yeah, it's a shadow of its former self. But in the 70s and 80s, there was an influx of the Glaswegians would come from the west over to Fife. For what was known as the Glasgow Fair Fortnight, where all the factories shut down at the summer holidays, everybody would come on here en masse because we've got brilliant beaches, miles and miles and miles of golden sands. Don't swim in that water. I mean, I've seen what I've flushed down there. You know what I mean? So, but so because of that, from a young age, we've having my family would take us down mainly from a young age the 2p penny fall machines, as kids love. There was no ticket redemption. There's no even a mojo or a different type of sweet chucked on there. It was just raw money, and ultimately,
Mojo, my goodness, they were like half a pence, I think they were.
that's right, a half p mojo. That's correct. So, in that respect, I knew what the arcades were, and you heard the cacophony of the sounds. And your parents, because they saw that as a profound waste of time, they would give you a little go, a little taste at a young age. So when I was maybe 4 or 5, I remember being lifted on my dad's shoulders to play Seawolf. You know, you had to look in the
Oh yeah,
periscope of the arcade game.
I remember
Uh,
Seawolf. I think you had that. Yeah, there was a little bit you could stand on. Yeah, you had
yeah,
just
yeah.
about reach.
So just being about
Yeah.
5 or 6, then because my brother was 5 years older, he would take me down, and that was better. He allowed me to play the games, and there was that kind of addiction of he'd meet with his friends, and his friends were cool, they were brilliant, and you would watch them specific games. So you watched Moon Patrol, how great they were at that, or Space Invaders, um, you know, all the greats, all the classics from your Pac-Mans, your Donkey Kongs, all that, and then right up to say even I remember being obsessed with watching one of my brother's mates. He was so good at Kung Fu Master, and I'm still terrible at that game today. And I
Brutal.
keep thinking, oh, I would love to be how good he was at it. And the tune, ding, 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 still resonates in my
Can I
head, you
interrupt you
know.
for a second? Do you
Mm-hmm.
know Paul Amos? Paul writes. He's one of the staff writers for the Zap magazine.
Yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know Paul. I think Paul actually. I think he had at one point he had the Galaxy record for Kung Fu Master on MAME.
Wow,
Yeah,
wow,
I've seen him
awesome.
playing it. Yeah, he just makes
Well done.
ridiculously
Yeah,
simple
it
tricks.
requires severe dedication to games like that. Games
Yeah.
that I think with these ones, I was always a bit more casual in my approach to them. I like playing them, but I would play it once, die after my 3 lives, and then move on to another machine rather than, because I was kind of an addict to getting different experiences rather than just sticking religiously to the one
Yeah.
game. So my life in the arcades was there. It always had been. So as a grown up, you've seen everything coming in because we had 4 arcade amusements in Leven where I lived. So you would just go from one to the next, and pretty much every weekend there was something new
Mhm.
released, or at
Mhm.
least every couple of weeks there was something new in there, and you were excited about it. It was a talk primary school, and that was, oh, this new game's down there, and you'd be excited and whiz down, spend all your pocket money or whatnot
Did
there.
you find was there a bit of like overlapping with arcades? Like would maybe two of them have the same machines, or did they all try? Or is it that? Yeah, yeah.
They did too, but I think equally they did pretty well at not having that saturation of too many of any particular game. Yeah, if it was a like Asteroids, that would be in most of them because people still
Mhm.
played that. So if it was popular, it would remain. One of the amusements was owned by the same family, so it was Johnny's Amusement. So there was as we called them, the big one and the small one. So it was wee Johnny's and big Johnny's, and that's how you
Just
referred
what I
them.
was saying earlier, yeah, there you
You,
go.
you get a bit of a complex if a
Yeah.
girl says to you, you want a wee Johnny or a big Johnny these days, you know what I mean? So, that's a completely different thing. Then there was one called Pleasureland, which was in an old Victorian seaside theatre, which
Oh,
was really
nice.
good. And I had really old classics there that remained for a while. And I still find that exciting because where other ones wanted to get the next biggest, boldest thing, they stuck with the classics. So you
Mhm.
could just jump between them all and just really, really get into it if you had the money, or steal the money, or however how you do it. Hang around when 2 pence penny fall machines became 10 pence penny fall machines. You always hung about them for an act of God, didn't you? For a coin to, and
Something
don't
left.
don't don't let the owner catch you because you fit you up the arse and chuck you out the amusement. So that was
And it,
good.
and inevitability, you would go around at the last minute, you'd put your hand into the coin reject slot of every machine to see if there's any money or not.
Exactly, absolutely. That was the final walk of the last desperation thing before you had to give up. I'm going home
And
now. I've spent all my cash.
and there was that really frustrating thing where you didn't have any money and you would see it would have like half a credit. Like it was
Yes.
20p
Oh,
and you had half a credit and you didn't have the
that's
money and you
right.
couldn't
Oh,
start
come
it. Like, no.
on. Going to be there's money everywhere. Surely somewhere there's another 10 pence somewhere. Yeah,
Well, I'm
absolutely.
really jealous of the fact that you obviously experienced arcades. As I've mentioned lots of times, I live in Livingston, which is kind of between Glasgow and Edinburgh for any of our English
I was there
viewers.
on
Or
Saturday. Oh,
What's that?
I was dragged clothes shopping to the retail outlet.
Oh, dearie
I,
me,
I honestly wanted
commiserations.
just to jump off a rooftop.
I avoid that place like the plague. But yeah, we never had any arcades on our doorstep. I mean, my kind of first introduction to arcades would be I remember going to, and this is an anecdote that I remember. I talk all the time. Is I grew up in the sort of, I was born in the late 60s, grew up in the early kind of 70s as a young kid, and on the odd occasion, my mum and dad would say, "Do you want to go and get chips like on a Friday night? Do you want to go and get chips?" Hey, me and my two sisters, and that was our Friday night. We would jump in the car and we'd go to the chip shop and get chips. And what we'd sometimes do is, do you want to go to Turnhouse Airport and watch the planes land? My dad had bought one of these little radios so you could hear like the pilots talking. So we would go to Turnhouse Airport, which is obviously now Edinburgh Airport, and you could go up to this viewing area and quite literally watch planes land. And I remember going there one day, and as we were going up the stairs, I saw this sort of TV screen thing, and I'm like, "What's that?" And I'm like, hurried over, and it turns out it was Pong. I remember just kind of staring at it, not really knowing much about it. Go on, hurry up! And that was it. And that was my kind of fleeting sort of
Right.
introduction to video games. But the travelling fair used to come to Livingston. I think it was maybe once a year, whatever, and it was all like the old ones you're talking about. Sea Wolf. What else was there? Was Sprint, the
Oh
little
yeah, yeah.
black and white, the
The black and white one, yeah.
four
No,
steering wheels with a little
very
oil
loose
patch.
slack steering wheels. They were
Yeah, you
great
could
and
just go
really.
boom, and you could just spin it. And
That's right.
there was like no tactile feedback. What else you had? You had the Atari basketball.
Uh, that is a classic. That's an early
Yeah,
memory for me as well.
yeah, with the big was it track balls? I think it was. It was track balls.
Trackball game.
And that, what's interesting, Gordon, is these early games, they were all based on time. It wasn't lives. It was time. You had like 90 seconds, and you would see the thing coming down. And the one that I can always distinctly remember is it something buggy? What's it called again? It's something buggy, and it's like the white screen, and it's just literally like the white lines. Or is it fire engine as well? You control this fire
Yeah.
engine, and you'd be driving this thing, and then it would get to, when it suddenly got to zero, it would just stop, and the road would start scrolling in a straight line up the way. But you're
Mhm.
that. What else did you have? These are the ones that I remember. And then we also had the things, and I was talking to somebody about that fairly recently. Do you remember the little? It was, I think it was like a kind of goldfish bowl globe thing, and underneath there was uh, there was like Skeletrix cars or little cars, and
Oh,
you had like,
geez,
it
yes.
was like silver red. You put like your 2 pence in. You had like, I think there's four of them, and you got like the odds. The silver was like 41, whatever it was, and you bet on these cars racing.
Just like Grand National, but with Formula
Exactly.
One
You had the
cars. Yeah.
horse ones, and you also had the little Skeletrix cars. I'm saying they
Yeah.
went round in a circle. I didn't. I think they went in a straight line actually. But yeah, it was all these kind of mechanical things. And I also remember they used to have, it was like a kind of skeet shooting type thing. Just, it was, I don't know, was that Nintendo made that? It was a big, massively.
Yeah, I
It
know
was like,
that.
it looked like trees and sky, and this
Mhm.
white thing would go woof, kind of come
Yeah.
flying across.
Well, I never got bought Tin Can Alley. I always wanted it,
Oh,
so that was the
my
next
mate
best
got
thing.
that. Yeah.
Oh,
Tin
super,
Can Alley.
super.
I got bought the, but there seemed to be a bit of a theme in my family. I would ask for something, I would want something, and they'd always buy me a slightly cheaper equivalent. So I wanted Tin Can Alley. They got me this thing. It was just an owl, and you hit it, it made a noise. And again, this is something I've mentioned before. I was desperate for. I was desperate. Oops, I've just hit the space bar by accident. I was desperate for Subbuteo, and my mum and dad bought me Subbuteo Rugby. I wanted Skeletrix. They got me a train set. It's like, and then I also wanted a Spectrum, and they got me a Texas. So yeah, they
Ooh,
never quite. They always went for
brutal.
the cheaper option, or the one that looked nicer.
You should have asked for a Commodore 64 then.
Well, I had to wait until I got a part-time job to get that. So yeah, I didn't really have any experience arcades until
Okay.
I started. Well, I got to, I don't know, 15, 16, and we would get the bus. We used to go into Edinburgh, Lothian Road, and there was LA's. But used to, was it Century 2000? I think, was that the nightclub that was right next to it. if you're coming
Yeah.
along the Great Western Approach Road, you come to
Yeah, that's
the.
where NQ64 is now.
Is it? I'm not sure what that
Yeah,
is. Aye.
NQ64 has moved into there now, the sort of retro arcade bar, if you've ever
Oh, is
been down
it?
there.
Oh,
Yeah,
right.
yeah, you
That's
got that
what
one in
Kenny.
Glasgow as well as Edinburgh,
Ah, right,
and
right.
you buy tokens behind the bar, and they've all got craft beers in there. It's all graffiti and neon lights and piss poor lighting where you're like peering, basically like an arcade then, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And they've got there's some real arcade machines there, but they're mainly LCD replicas. But you've got Qbert, you've got Track and Field, other games like that in there, and there's consoles as well, retro consoles. And it's quite funny when you go in there on, say, a Friday night. Um, a lot of the millennials just stick to the Sega things, and
Mm.
it's like, I can play even under emulation or hardware. If I want to play an N64 or a SNES or a Mega Drive or a Wii, I'll just do that at home. I'm not going all the way into Edinburgh or Glasgow to play that. So you can get on the pinball tables and the arcade machines quite readily there. It's quite good.
No, right. And you pay so much. It's like arcade club. You pay like a fee to
It's
get in or
six
something.
quid for so many tokens, and they do
Aye.
last you a reasonable amount of time. And the beer is pretty strong, so you start getting quite minced quickly, to be honest. And then play even crapper at the games and come back for more tokens. They've even got Super Monkey Ball there with a big phallic banana that you all
Oh,
photograph your mates handling when they're playing the game.
oh, you grasp with two hands. All right, that's yeah.
Are you a one-hander or two-hander?
But yeah, obviously, on the odd occasion we would go to it was Burnt Island. We always went to Burnt Island, and
Mhm.
my kind of memories of Burnt Island was there was an outdoor swimming pool, and obviously they had the arcades. And again, I've got this really, really vivid memory. People occasionally say to me, "Oh, if there's anything in your past that you could go back and change, what would you do?" I've got this really vivid memory. I think it must have been, I don't know, 1985. It was like the summertime. I must have borrowed my dad's car or something. I must have just passed my driving test, and me and a couple of mates we were driving to Burnt Island, and I can't remember exactly where it was, but we're heading there. We'd gone over the Forth Road Bridge, and we saw a Galaxian arcade machine lying at the side of the road. I'm like, "Oh, look at that!" And we just drove past it. Yeah, I mean, we didn't. I don't know if the screen was in it, whatever. But I remember seeing this Galaxian arcade cabinet sitting at the side of the road. Obviously, somebody was like fly tipping it. Oh, let's get this to work, and
Yeah.
we'll just leave it for somebody to pick up. And of course, we just drove past it. And it sounds crazy. I think people would say, "What? Why didn't you go back and get a van or whatever?" But 1985. I'd got my Commodore 64. I wasn't interested in playing Galaxian or Space
Mhm.
Invaders. These were like old hat.
Mhm.
It's only 40 years on that we've got the nostalgia and we want to revisit these machines. But it's the same with like when I went from a Commodore 64 to an Atari ST. I couldn't wait to get rid of it. I remember trying to sell my C64, and I think somebody gave me 100 quid for like the disc drive, the tape, hundreds and thousands of discs and games, had all the Zap magazines, and it's like 100 quid out there, you go, just have
Yeah.
everything, have
Yeah.
everything. And in retrospect, if I could tell myself now, you'd go back, don't be so stupid. But you weren't thinking about the past. You'd never think to yourself, I'm going to want to play a Commodore 64 in like 2025. Don't be ridiculous. It's just through nostalgia.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Here we are.
yeah, I know. So wait, how? So yeah, so what was your kind of timeline with machines? What was your
All right.
first
Okay.
console
So
computer?
the first, obviously, like anyone, there was a whole kind of grandstand binatone thing in the
Yeah,
late
I had one of
'70s,
them.
but the telly always wandered out of tune off it and that. But it even felt rudimentary and crap then, considering what you were playing in the arcades or what you
Yep.
were seeing with Atari. So initially, not that we could afford the Atari at home, but my brother's friend, the one that was good in Kung Fu Master, oddly, his father worked on the oil rig, so they were always in good money back then. So because of the absence of a father, he bought them all the good gear. They had the shit, And but he was a very generous person and gave my brother like a 2-week loan of it regularly, right? And he'd be in the bedroom and I get to play it. I went, this is great, this is fantastic. And they'd then being the age they are would bugger off out, because I would be probably, so 19, we're talking 1980, 1981 was about the time I'm playing this. So I was born in 73. So, you know, you're 7, 8 year old, something like that. And they're 5 years older. So they're teenagers. They're, you know, they're actually at high school now. So they, they only play that more casually. They're off out getting up to nonsense, smoking, drinking, whatever. And I'm left to my devices with dozens of cartridges, putting them on, loving the games. This is, and sucked into it, you know, just loving it. And then I was lucky enough then in 1984 to get the ZX Spectrum. And that was obviously my first love of home computers. Just played that right through to 1990. And didn't even bother embracing the 16-bit era until that period where I just had, it was starting to show its age by that point, you know what I mean? So then it was always my brother buying things then, still living at home at this point, and it would be his Atari ST and then his Amiga, and I bought his Amiga off him, and then I had the Amiga, and it was like, yes, just fantastic. 12, because he moved on to PCs then, so I had a 1200 and loving life playing all the good Amiga games, but that died, and it was like, I didn't have that a great wage at that point in the job I was doing, so I'd gotten a SNES, so that was good. I was enjoying that, you know, but it's still kind of old gen. So in '95, I saw the PlayStation and fell in love with what that had to offer. You know, at the same time, then because I was loving Mario and the SNES, I had to get myself a Nintendo 64. So there's that kind of addiction, you know. So I'm enjoying these consoles at that point. Then I get to the PC, probably about 1998, 1999, I get in the PC gaming for myself. That's where the addiction of that and still remains yet. But in between that, I've had always stuck with Nintendo consoles. So I've got every subsequent Nintendo console released right through to the Switch. So whether it be the GameCube, the Wii U, the ill-fated Wii U. I've got Dreamcast, PlayStation 2, 3, and 4. Stopped at that now. It was always for the exclusive games that I was interested in them. And now in this era, now there's nothing really left because even Sony's exclusive games are being getting released on the PC. So there's just no point. I just love sitting on my PC as a hub. If I want to emulate, I can fire up a particular game. You know, you can have Discord with your friends on one screen, chat away, play as you know, it's all changed. So my love was always with a home computer and how games can either be hacked, modified, or longevity given in them by the willingness of people to modify them. And that's the kind of thing I like about how PC gaming is, that it's not old hat. You know what I mean? Whereas people move on to the next console, yeah, you need a new hardware on your PC to get the latest AAA games. But look at the back catalogue; it's all there. The retro, it's all went digital now, so you can't sell like you did with your Commodore for £100, you know, and a date with a guy's sister. That's what you failed to mention that, by the way. You know, so that's kind of my timeline in a very quick nutshell.
So when you got the PC, I mean, if you're anything like myself, and again, it's I mean, I've got quite a stupid kind of large collection of hardware. I mean, I've had a lot more, and over the last sort of 5 years, I've kind of realised that one, I don't really use them because I've got a Mister, which to me has been the best purchase I've made for a long time. It just nails it. It's fantastic at everything it does. It gives that old kind of school experience. You switch the Dragon 64 on or Dragon 32, and all you get is like ready, right? How do I load a game? But so I've got lots and lots of stuff that I want to kind of get rid of. But what was I going to say? So, well, yeah, we live in an age now where you've probably got multiple systems. I've got multiple systems. Back in the 70s and 80s, you know, unless you were stupidly rich, you had a Commodore 64. If you wanted an Atari ST, you had to sell that and get another one. If you wanted an Amiga, you had to sell your ST. So you only ever had one system. And then eventually I got to the point where I had a PC, and that was like that was my sole kind of gaming platform until I think I got a PlayStation. How did have you always, has the love for like playing games and all that never left you, or did you get away from playing classic games and then you got back into it like later on with internet and what have you?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think everybody has peaks and troughs in their gaming relationship in life. So I think it's like a coming of age thing. You get to a certain age, become a working man, and then you're going out to the pubs with your mates, um, chasing women, that kind of the thing where they're getting cars, driving about, up to that kind of malarkey. But I was always there. I didn't never have a computer. I mean, I seriously got into music and done band stuff. You may see the guitars in the
Yeah,
background,
I was going to ask you about that. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so I've done bands and gigging since I was 19-year-old.
Do you still play in
So
a band?
hiatus because everybody's on shift work now, and it's just a
Uh,
ball ache to coordinate. And it gets more and more that 1 o'clock in the morning you're slugging gear back into a car, and
yeah,
you've been the nominated driver that night, and everybody else is half pissed and in the car as well, and you're like, can't be bothered with this anymore. You know what I mean? I could have sat in my bum and gamed all night. I mean, it's kind of
yeah,
back to I went full circle, right? Like when I was a youth, where I just want peace and quiet now. I've just got to that age where I appreciate me time
yeah,
more
yeah.
so because work's busy, it's intense,
Mhm.
family dynamics. Just bringing up your family and all the rest. There's less of that time, but now like my boy, he's off to uni in so many months' time, and the empty nest syndrome will kick in, and you need to fill that void, and it'll probably be more gaming or whatever. Who knows? But I think generally it has never left me. I always am hesitant to adopt, especially when it was the consoles, the next system. But then someone shows me something that's exclusive, and there's games on this tonight, so I'll not spoil it to you now. That
Yeah, yeah,
says to me, I need to get this now. This is incredible. It excites me again. It gives me the
yeah,
feel that the first game that I'm going to mention, okay, gives me right. And you know how you're seeking for it's like a junkie looking for that same
yeah,
hit.
yeah.
It,
Then
it
that great.
never you can never find it. There's a few
Yeah,
defining moments that you get that feel again, and
yeah.
I love that. Even in my adult years, I was able to capture that.
Aye, I found that, and you're talking about the hit. I mean, going from like the Binatone to like I got a Texas, which I only had one game for, which I'll not go into. But yeah, the Commodore 64. It's like wow, all the
Mm.
music and the graphics,
Mm-hmm.
what have you. And
Mm-hmm.
then you took that leap to the Atari ST, and
Oh
it's like
wow.
holy shit. In fact, I've done a video, and what I've called it, it's 10 wow moments, and it's moments in my gaming life where I've loaded a particular game or whatever. I'm like, holy shit, that's
Yeah.
incredible! Wow! And but I couldn't get it down to 10, so it's 11. It's a Spinal
There's
Tap
a good
episode.
few of them, and when you get
Yeah,
hit like that, it
yeah,
makes you realize why you've stuck with gaming and why you love it. And
yeah,
it's just that shift, that revolutionary leap that a game's done, and offer you that same level of impact as it did to your young eyes when you were first impressed.
yep. It's to be honest with me now, it's pretty much it. There's very little. I can't remember the last time. Probably when I got the VR, the
Mm,
Oculus Quest thing. Holy shit, VR! This is incredible. Hardly
yeah.
use it, but yeah. As far as like kind of regular kind of gaming goes, I mean, I remember buying. I remember getting my PlayStation 4,
Hmm.
and it arrived. I think I bought it from Amazon, and it arrived. And it sat unopened for about 3 4 days. I thought, oh, I could do an unboxing video. I was so like underwhelmed
Yeah.
because it was really nothing but going from an 8-bit to 16-bit. Wow, graphics! Look at that. It's like
Yeah.
real. It looks real. You had all the digitized sound. All the kind of early games in the 16-bit were all like guitar riffs and all this kind of stuff.
Hmm.
And then obviously you had your sort of like uh, jumping to. I remember seeing my mates. In fact, I heard him. I went up to my mate's house, and he'd just bought a PC, and I remember hearing, "What the hell is that?" And I went in, and he had this massive like 24-inch CRT, and he was playing Doom, and I'm like, bloody hell! And that's it. When I got down the road, I remember having a word with my ex at the time, thinking, oh, I need to try and get a computer, and it's like, go to the magazine, it was like, £1,200. It's
Yeah,
like,
12.
how the
That's great.
hell am I going to get it? Where am I going to get £1,200 from? You know, that was like half my salary back then. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's what I find interesting as well is, I mean, like most people kind of our age and probably younger. It's because we were lucky, we were like the first generation. We were there at the very, very beginning, and I think it's a great time, and that's why I still get. I mean, just before I came on, I was sitting playing. I've got 3 cabinets in my kitchen. That's the wonders of that's the wonderful thing about living on your own. You can have arcade cabinets in your kitchen, and nobody bothers. I fired up Defender, and it's still, even now, I'm like, I'm playing arcade Defender. I've got the
Yeah.
controls. It's great,
Yeah.
Getting back to what I was talking about, we were all my mates were into games, and I'm probably the only one that's still they'll play the PlayStation 4, whatever it is, but I'm the only one
Yeah.
that's
Hardcore.
still infected with this. I get excited about playing 8-bit games, and I kind of look at myself more as a historian. It's probably like yourself as well. You probably don't play that many games, but you just love talking about them.
Oh,
There's
it's
just
great.
something.
Yeah.
There's something. I just get really happy talking about the old days. It's something it's a wonderful, wonderful thing.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Because even when we're doing it on our own podcast, I don't like just speaking about the games. It sparks memories, and you talk
Yeah,
about people you knew, daft characters, crazy guys that maybe played these games with you, and the anecdotes that come out are just as part of. Some of these people I'm speaking about are dead and gone now for
yeah,
sad reasons, and they're no longer there. But there's the memory remains, and you remember sitting in the bedroom playing Jetpack with them or something like that, and it's like this is fantastic, and it's good. So it's not just the nostalgia for the game, but the whole zeitgeist of the period is important.
yeah. Nah, awesome. So what was I going to say? When did you get involved with? It's the retro. I had to write it down. It's RGD, Retro Gaming Discussion Podcast.
Mm.
When did that kind of kick off? Because is that fairly new? Because I think that kind of, how long have you been?
2017, I joined.
Was it?
Aye,
Yeah.
so that's a good 8 years I've done that with the guys for, and it existed for about the same length of time prior to that. It started off with one man, Andy Godoy. He had formed. He was
Because
a co-former with Dean for
Dean
Retro
Swain, yeah.
Asylum. Yeah, so Andy Godoy and Dean formed Retro Asylum.
Yeah.
So the early episodes, Andy's on that. Then they part ways. Andy's one of these people who goes away for it for a while and then comes back. Oh, I'm hungry. I want to do it again. So he created RGDS. It was a one-man
Ah,
show, retro gaming daily show, like what you're saying of just the over keenness. But
yeah.
clearly, then it becomes unattainable to do that. So become discussion show. You get some other hosts on, but funnily enough, I got to know Andy, and as he decided he wasn't wanting to do it again in 2017, and he was looking for someone with 8-bit knowledge, because a lot of the guys on it, although some of them did, you need a counterpart to do some more. It's good having 2 years. There's no more monologues like his early episodes. Many of them were a bit younger and were more Master System people and so forth from that.
Mm-hmm.
So they thought I fitted in, and I thought I would just, I'll come and do a couple of episodes, and my goodness, there's hundreds of episodes done now
7
between
years
then.
later.
7 years later, it's great. It's great. I love it. Love
Yeah,
it. The
yeah.
the friends and community,
Aye.
like our Discord friends that we chat with on a daily basis. Even Ian from the Edinburgh Mappy, from
Oh,
the
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
he's in chatting in that channel as well.
Yeah, yeah.
We have our annual meetup now at Arcade Club in Bury once a year, and we're going October again this year. It gets bigger, more people go, but few beers, 2 days off Arcade Club. It's just fantastic. High score challenges. What it's
Yeah.
done is made contacts with like-minded people.
Mm-hmm.
Right, it's the social side that I completely love of this, Alan.
Yeah, yeah.
That's more important than anything to me, is connecting with people with the same, like yourself, the same feelings and the same memories about retro video gaming.
Mm-hmm. No, I'm completely with you. Completely with you. It's interesting you're talking about your. I've been listening to your podcast probably for a couple of years. Um, I do listen to the Retro Asylum. Um, what's Dan's Woods, the Retro Hour.
Retro hour,
Uh,
yeah.
Dan's a cracking lad. I've had Dan. He's done this podcast with me. I've had Dean on. I've known Dean for quite a while. He's been on my channel a few times. Cracking lad.
Good guy.
He's like Ray Winston, isn't he? When you get a Cockney and a Scottish guy, nobody can understand a word of anybody's say, honestly.
Very true, very true.
But yeah, I don't listen to the Retro Hour quite so much because whilst Dan has got a great knowledge, the other two lads, is it Ravi?
Hmm.
I don't know the other name of the guy. They're quite a bit younger. So they talk about like the Master System, the NES, and that. And I've got no affinity for any of these systems at all. And because I'm 57 years. Yeah, I'm 57 years old. I was almost forgetting my age there. There's not many older than me that are kind of doing this kind of thing, and so I do. Whilst I can't remember what I had for my tea yesterday, I've got this stupid, ridiculous knowledge when it comes to like 8-bit computer games and who wrote that game for the Spectrum. Well, that was such
Yeah.
and such. It's
What
stupid.
keys? I bet you still remember the keys on the
Yeah.
keyboard for a particular
Well,
game.
Well, I was a C64 guy, so I
Ah,
didn't
joystick wanker.
understand. So I didn't do keys. So that's why I can. As anyone that watches any of my live streams will testify, I cannot do keys. Um, but what the hell was I talking about? Completely forgotten where I was going with that. Yeah, I'll sometimes listen to a podcast and they'll say something that's incorrect. I'm like, that's not right, and I get frustrated because, like, I know I really do, and I'm not. This you're not going to boast. You're not going to go boast to anybody, but I have got a really good knowledge of like the really early kind of days of 8 bits, And so when I hear or when they're talking about something, they'll say, I don't know. Does anybody remember? I don't know, like Mr. Wimpy, and I'm like, Mr. Nah. You're like, how can you not know? How can you
Right.
not know Mr. Wimpy? Bloody hell, So the thing is, and I've been listening to the RGD podcast for a couple of years, and your kind of gaming history is uncannily like my gaming history to the point,
Mm.
and it's quite funny. I got a Facebook request of somebody, a guy called Nick, who I used to pal about with in primary school. I hadn't seen him for probably best part of 40 years. And we actually went out a couple of days ago. I've got two dogs. He's got a dog. We met for a walk. And I said to him, I says, do you remember you had an Atari 26, or I called it, I says, Atari VCS. And he,
Hmm.
oh, I do. Aye. He goes, I was on that Pac-Man. I went, aye, aye. I says, and you brought it up to my house. I couldn't afford one. My mum and dad categorically I wouldn't even ask for a
Yeah, that's the
2600. My
point.
mom
Yeah,
and dad
you
like,
wouldn't ask.
you're not getting one. Can't afford it. You're not getting one, so don't ask. I wouldn't ask, and I would watch adverts. I remember Ken Everett did an advert for it. It was Space Invaders, and I thought, oh, and it was going about in my head constantly. How can I raise £100 when you're 10 years old? You've got no chance of raising £100.
It was a lot of money in 79, 80, whenever, it's...
And yeah, so anyway, Nick, he came up to my house one day and he brought this Atari 2600, and funnily enough, his dad worked in oil rigs,
There you go. So,
and he
even
said,
more parallels, mate.
because he said that to me. He says, we were talking a couple of days ago. And I says, and he says, aye. I says, how? I says, your dad was in oil rigs. He says, aye. I says, were you quite close to him? He went, well, not really. Says, but he used to, because he was away all the time. He used to like this buy stuff. And funnily enough, he didn't leave it for 2 weeks, but he left. He came up and we played it. We commandeered the only TV in the house like all day. I think it was during the summer holidays, and it got to about 9 o'clock at night. And because his dad was in oil rigs, I think his mum used to sort of like, there's £5, and he, look
She's
at he would
busy getting suzzled on wine
he would.
because there's no man there, right? So she doesn't care.
I think she used to go to the bingo, and he would just basically be out the house the whole day. My mum would say to him,
Oh.
"Nick, I think you better think about going home, son." So anyway, it got to about 9 o'clock at night, and Nick's like, I'm like, "Do you want to come back tomorrow?" He went, "Yeah, yeah. Can you bring your Atari?" He goes, I think I'll just leave it here, and I'm like, all right, that's fine. So he went away, and
You
that
never
was it. I
slept
was
that night, mate.
still got the blisters to prove it, honestly, God. But
Oh, great
yeah,
memories. Great memories.
phenomenal. So you've been have you did you do any YouTube at all? Any YouTube stuff like before you got involved with the podcast, or was
No, I
that your
used
first
to.
kind of?
No, my first foray was retro remakes, making them for the PC. So I was
Hmm,
involved in the scene from about 99, making PC versions of old retro games or continuing sequels and stuff like that. So they're all up on archive.org now. They're terrible. But that was another community of great minded people, friends that I'm still friends with today, just learning the craft of taking, 8-bit games and giving them a bit more a modern aesthetic,
hmm, hmm.
and that was fun. I liked that process. I really enjoyed that. But what happened is the indie scene really exploded, and making games that were like spiritual successors or deeply inspired by these classic games. So the need, the hunger for that connection was different. That people goes, okay, I've got emulation, so or misters or whatever, right? So I can play these games when I want that nostalgia hit. But if I want something indicative of that game, someone's written it on itch.io these days, haven't they? And there's something
Yeah, yeah,
similar
yeah,
that you can
yeah,
play, which I love. The indie scene's fantastic, captures that bedroom coder spirit.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, so did you actually like do a bit of programming and that kind of stuff as well, then, or what?
Yeah, well, it
Yeah,
was a thing called
love
Click Team
that.
Fusion. It wasn't
Uh,
like programming language as such. It was more a table based thing. It was parallels with you. You'll be more familiar with Game Maker and things like that, right? But it still required knowledge to make a game. And it's not just any idiot can make a game. And I realized that very quickly when I can make a game easy, and this is terrible. But no, it was fun, and the more you learned it, and the more things you can do, rather than using the inbuilt engine, you programmed your own movement um, language, if you want to call it, and that, and collision detection and stuff like that. So it's like anything. You start using an engine, it's like everything becomes homogenized, isn't it?
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah,
and the software houses were bad for that in 8-bit days. You can imagine, say, Ultimate Play the Game, they released Nightlord to much wow to the world. Then Alien 8 came out, and then Pentagram, and this is just the same engine. I'm being a bit conned here.
yeah.
So
I've flogged it to
yeah,
death.
you need to try and make games feel unique to their own thing, if you see what I mean.
Yeah. Is there any game like 8-bit game? In fact, I'm going to ask you two questions.
Hmm.
Is there what percentage of 8-bit games do you think you would still want to play?
Oh, me, a hell of a lot more than most other people. You get people
Yeah,
going back and the rose tinted glasses are there. Oh, I can't wait to play Monty Mole. The fire
mhm,
up went, oh, that's a lot of shite, right?
yeah,
I don't get that disgust in games. I get a deep thrill from playing the 8-bit period. It's still my most favourite era. So,
mhm,
I mean, look at me. I'm doing Crash Magazine, right? Doing the
yeah.
reviews, and albeit they're new games, but they're still 8-bit
I've
games.
got them all there, by the way. I've got
There you
I
go.
subscribed to the Zap Mini and the
Awesome.
Crash Mini. I've
Awesome.
only read
So,
a couple. Like
mhm.
like most people our age, we buy these things, we get them, and yeah, you buy them. And like, have you read? No, I've not read them. I mean, people have the number of people that like when the Spectrum Next was coming out, they couldn't wait. Oh, I can't wait. I can't wait. As soon as you bought it, oh, you see people saying, "Oh, it's sat in a shelf for
Mhm.
like 2 years." It seems to be a very common thing with older people like ourselves in
Mhm.
the hobby.
You've
It's
you've
it's a
got
good
to
thing.
make time for
Yeah,
these things. I mean, it's the trouble with me. You do a podcast, so you're less likely to listen. used to be a fan of the very podcast you're now a co-host of. So it's only if your other hosts are doing an episode that you get a chance to delve in and actually enjoy one, because you don't want to go back and listen to your own bloody voice, are
Do
you?
you listen to your own podcasts?
Hmm?
You listen to your own podcasts back?
No. Well, when I edit them, and that's enough for me for
Yeah,
life. I mean,
yeah,
sometimes you go
yeah.
back, if enough years have passed, I'll go back and listen to it and go, right.
Aye,
And you go, that wasn't as bad as I thought it was in my mind's eye. But
yeah.
there's a thing, none of these are vanity projects for me. So the stories out there, it's the feedback and connection with other people's the reward for it. And
Mhm.
you'll get someone that rises from the grave, isn't it? Someone you released 2 years ago, and someone puts in his social media, oh, they really enjoyed that because they've just came across
Yeah,
your show, so it's new to them, and they're like, "Oh, I listened to that one you did on Ocean Software or something like that." And it's like, "Oh, cool, cool," and and you ask them then what memories do they have, and it's great. It engages another conversation.
aye,
That's the important bit for me. Of course, I
yeah.
love doing that. I wouldn't do it. That's just silly. Um, the editing is always a slog, especially when we do our 3 or 4 hour hour long episodes. It's like, oh
Editing, what's that? I quite literally
shit.
get, once this finishes, I'll slap an intro, I'll slap an outro, boom. Although I have been caught out in the past. I remember years ago, I do a thing called the Friday Waffle every Friday, funnily enough, and I talk for an hour. It used to be really about video games, but it's now morphed into me just complaining about stuff, just moaning about stuff, and like, this is shit. But people enjoy watching it. But I remember years ago, I was recording a Friday Waffle, and I'd finished it, put it up, uploaded it onto YouTube, and then I saw a comment, something about, oh, that was hilarious when your daughter came into the bedroom. I went, oh fuck, and I watched it, and I'm like, blah 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 blah. I'm like, what is it, Eva? I'm trying to record a video. Fucking hell, and I thought it was in the video, and they're
Yeah,
like, an
and
absolute
people like that.
what a wanker you. You've always got to make sure you edit the bits so you're like, oh
Yeah,
god.
yeah.
So I tend not to edit it. But yeah, and the second question I was going to ask you, is there any one game from like an 8-bit that you would love to see sort of like a modern iteration of? Is there
Oh,
any
absolutely,
game?
and it's one of the games I'm
Yeah.
covering on my.
All right. Well, if it's then
It
don't
is.
mention
I've
it.
been an advocate for a modern iteration of this for years, but I mean, let me think of another one. There's that many, to be honest. That you know, one that I'll tell you one that's not on my list that they haven't captured properly, and it should, because I have redone it, and it wasn't. It was on the PlayStation One. They redone it, and I just didn't. Just, I don't know. It was too dark. Anyway, that was the Sentinel by.
Oh, right. Was that on the
Yeah,
PlayStation? No, I didn't
yeah,
realise that. Yeah.
yeah. They released that. So that was by. I've taken a brain fart.
It was the BT company, Firebird
No, but it's the
Software.
author. He does the Formula One games.
Oh, Jeff Crammond.
Jeff Crammond, thank you. Honestly,
Yeah,
complete brain fart there. So Jeff Crammond redid it for the PlayStation One. So
didn't know that.
brilliant 3D landscape game with the promise of 10,000 different landscapes at the time, absorbing the Sentinel in his high tower. He's rotating around. It's like a checkered chessboard thing where you teleport and absorb trees and what. And the PlayStation 1 was okay, but I remember buying it and being excited and bringing it. We used to have like Thursday night beer and pizza night at my mate's house for the PlayStation. And it's like you'd rent a game and you can just copy it because you chipped your PlayStation as usual. New games this week. Come down with the Sentinel, and they were like, "What a lot of shite!" You try to explain the concept of the game, and like, "This is boring." It's like, "Come on, guys, this is exciting." There's
Absorbing
been
trees. Yeah.
there's been freeware ones. The closest one I think that's captured is one on itch.io. And anyone's bought any of these charity bundles on that site that came out in the last couple of years, it's called Anwin, and it is that game, and it using the Unity engine kind of has that, that kind of look that all these games get made like in Unity, with like games like Rhyme and things like that. They're not completely high def. They're almost not cell shaded looking,
Yeah.
but kind of cartoony, but if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
It has that look to it, and it probably works the most. There was another one called Sentry, done by a French guy, that he'd done it in 3D stereoscope mode. So you put your 3D glasses on and it all stood out, and that was good. I liked that. But I think Sentinel, because you mentioned VR earlier,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
where I want to play that game. I think
Mm.
that's where it
Have you
should.
have you tried VR before?
Yeah, I've got an Oculus Rift. Half-Life Alex was where it was at for me.
Oh,
That
that's
was
something else.
phenomenal.
That is.
Absolutely phenomenal. I mean,
I've not
Beat Saber,
completed it.
great
Yeah,
game, but yeah,
yeah.
but
That is something else.
yeah.
Yeah, there's two games I would love to see. Not so much a remake. I just want to see it. I want to see the same gameplay, but I just want it brought to life. Do you remember? And it didn't. I think there was there was a couple of R-types that came out. I think for the PlayStation, and you could like when you're in game, you could press. Would it be like the Y button, and it would morph into like the 8-bit graphics.
PlayStation Y. Come on, triangle, circle, square, or X.
Sorry, yeah, I beg it. Triangle, eh? I'm getting confused with my bloody Xbox 360. It would be the triangle, I think it is the
Yeah.
one at the top, isn't it? But yeah, you could actually on the fly, you could press a button and it would morph between like new graphics or old graphics.
Yes.
Quite nice. But yeah, there's two games I'd like to see just brought up to date. The first one is Way of the Exploding Fist on the Commodore 64. I love that game. I know people going about, oh, it's international karate, blah blah blah.
Nope.
There's just something about international Way of Exploding Fist, the
Mm-hmm.
graphics, probably the nostalgia. I would just love to see these guys. They look like the guys with a monkey with the big sideburns and all that kind of stuff. I'd love to see them just go whoop into like full kind of 4K, but keep the music, keep everything the same.
Keep that
Uh,
fluidity just the way it is, you
yeah,
think, yeah.
don't add anything to it. Just make it the same game, but just I would love to see that.
And as long as
And
that groin punch still makes contact, then you'll be a happy man.
and the other game, it might be a game that you're not familiar with because it wasn't a very well known game. Rocket Ball for the
No,
C64.
don't know that one.
Rollerball, you've probably seen the film, is it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you go around in a circle. That's what Rocket Ball was basically based on. It's a great game. It was a really early game. It kind of flew under the radar. I mean, to kind of like timestamp it, they've got little advertising boards, and you've got Quattro and like Pepsi Cola and all this sort of stuff. So that kind of dates it.
Right.
But
Yeah.
a great game. I would love to see that brought up to just put it on the Xbox, something like that.
Cool.
Nice. So just before we kind of get into the actual the podcast itself, obviously we've touched on you've got the Retro Asylum and we've got the other one which I keep forgetting the name of it. Dan's
The
one,
retro hour, yeah.
Retro Hour. Is there any rivalry between you guys? I know you've appeared. I was listening to one just before Christmas. In fact, I actually made where was I was driving down to Sutton Coldfield, which is the arse end of bloody Great Britain, and I think I was listening to. It was a bit of a battle. I think you were one of the judges, and
Yeah,
you
it's
were
the 8-bit
arguing about.
wars on Retro
It was
Asylum,
about.
yeah.
You're trying to keep. Yeah. So you've appeared on the Retro Asylum. I
That's the
mean,
third year running. They asked me for their Christmas special to rejoin. See, they had an ex-host that was disgraced. He had left
I
them.
yeah, I was aware
Yeah,
of that. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. So out of decency, they had to remove the former episodes that featured all the 8-bit wars that they were highly popular on um, their show. So they decided for Christmas specials to resurrect them, do new themes, and they've been incredibly popular. It's been great to be brought in to join the guys and do it. It's always a good laugh, and I think the conversation started about September, by the way, if I remember right, the messages start pinging, right, it's that time again. We need to start considering a theme, how we're going to do it, who's going to be the judges this year, who's going to be in Camp Spectrum, Camp Amstrad, so
It's hilarious. Yeah.
it's good. It's good fun. So rivalry, I mean, I don't feel any threat or rivalry with any of the other podcasters. Room for more. And it's a great community in general, I think. I mean, you have spats between some people, I think you see online and that, and disagreements on things. But
Mhm.
all in all, I think it's an a genuinely respectful community.
Yeah. No, I find that as well. Like I says, I mean, it's whilst the whole hobby and the scene has grown massively, probably in the last 10 years. Um, there's still the same people that are kind of where there's quite a small scene of people who
Yes.
like put out YouTube videos and podcasts and all that kind of stuff. And I think it's fantastic. It
Mm.
really is.
Yes. Well, I
Um,
think it's great. And the longer people keep doing it, I think personally, the better, because it's a bit like it's a hobby of a very niche hobby, right? That, like your daughter, like my son, they're not even interested when we're pushing up daisies, right? And if they're still in our rooms or upper lofts, they're going in the skip with these
yeah,
kids.
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
not
yeah,
taking, it's like
yeah,
your granddad's Bakelite vinyl, right? With Slim Whitman singing or something like that. I was like, what the crap is this? They're not remotely interested. So
yeah.
it's going to fall off a cliff edge.
I think it will. I think you're right. Yeah, I don't. I
And
think.
it saddens me that
Mhm.
the knowledge, like you're saying, because we all have memories and knowledge of these games, we're telling how it is rather than just, AI won't be able, unless AI will learn to listen to podcasts, right, and adapt its knowledge from that. Just reading Wikipedia pages or scans of magazines, right, only picks up a very small part of the scene,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
knowledge. It's all about how we played the games
Mhm.
is where the history is.
Mhm. Aye. No, you're right. And I always think to myself that, you know, uh, I mean, I do YouTube. I do it for fun. I enjoy doing it. Don't get me wrong. There's, you know, when I'm going through maybe a tough time in my life for whatever reason, personal stuff, YouTube's the first thing to kind of drop off because you just can't. You've got to be in the right frame of mind. You've got to, it's a hobby, whatever. But I look upon like myself, you guys, my mate Tony Temple. Tony does the what do you call it, the Ted Dabney podcast. All these
Mm,
guys that are doing all these podcasts. We're all we're all kind of historians. We're all documenting the 1980s for people
hmm
to come because when I get hit with a bus or drop dead, I mean, I'm 57, I'm not going to be here probably 20, 30 years time. I will definitely not be here, but
hmm
hopefully my YouTube videos will still exist in some form.
Well, that's an
Um,
interesting thing, that, because there's a fella that done all the playthroughs for pretty much the vast entire catalogue of the ZX Spectrum. Okay, he died a few years back, and because someone put a complaint up about his playthrough of Sam Fox Strip Poker, that got
like
a
a strike
warning
or something.
against it. But because it was his account, no one else had admin access. Okay, um, that was a strike, and because he didn't then take it down, or I think there was a few other strikes on top of that
Oh,
with
right.
prudes,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
people with
Seriously.
a vindictive nature towards, for whatever reason, because there's twisted people out there that just want to
Aye.
piss in
Oh, yeah,
people's
yeah, yeah,
parades,
yeah.
right? Because of that, that was all taken down, and his family have tried to fight legally, and YouTube, Google are not interested. That's it, it's
Yeah,
gone. And
no,
there's a whole
no.
piece of history of
It's just going.
thousands of
Yeah,
games played from start to finish, they gone,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
That's awful, and that's the how ephemeral the digital era is. Now, I know there's
Hmm.
advocates, oh, it needs to be real hardware, and
Hmm.
I don't have the real estate. If the amount of PC games I've got on my Steam digital library, I've got like 1,500, 1,600 games on Steam now, right? An insane amount. I couldn't store the bloody rafters and the beams, the floor joists would be snapping, you know what I mean? Or that then it becomes hoarding, and that's a different thing altogether. There's only so much you can store retro wise.
Yeah.
So you have to be wise what you want to keep, what systems or what particular games have that importance to you that you want to keep, and just get rid of the rest if you're having that declutter need. that you have to
yeah,
do.
yeah.
But yeah,
It's
history.
that's when it's something. I mean, you've got these. I've never been to it yet. You've got like the museum. Is it down in Cambridge? It was.
Yeah,
It's I can't
it got
remember exactly
flooded.
what it was. What's that?
It got flooded in the
Oh,
recent floods.
oh, did it really? Oh, bloody hell! Was there
Yeah,
much damage?
I got buggered up with that. So I
Aye,
think there was a crowdsource campaign for that. The
aye.
Cambridge Computing History
Aye,
Museum.
yeah, yeah. But it really needs not companies, but organisations like that, because things like YouTube, you've just hit the nail on the head there. I mean, like my Facebook account got hacked about 2 years ago. Uh, it got hacked, and then I tried to log in to change the password, and it says your account's locked. And I tried to contact them, and
Oh,
it's like your account. It says it's effectively it's locked, and you can't do anything about it. So I lost like 16 years of Facebook, which it was annoying. So I've had to kind of create a new one. But
Yeah.
yeah, stuff like what I do and what you do. I mean, I've been doing this for like 13 odd years, whatever. They really need to start thinking, let's start backing up some of
Mhm.
these YouTube channels and podcasts and what have you, and have it there on an archive. Because if if YouTube decide one day, you know what, this is costing us too much money, boom, pull the plug on it, gone. That's it.
That's it. It's
Everything's
gone.
gone.
And there's great information out there, not just in our thing, but in any hobby, in any interest that, the tutorials, everything. There's a wealth of knowledge on YouTube alone, an infinite amount, to be honest. And it'd be sad to see anybody's creative content go just because they're no longer there to defend the integrity of their brand, if you want to call it that. That's shit, and I feel for that. It's a bit like your Steam digital library. If I
Yeah.
die, why can't I pass it to my son? You can't. It's not
Hmm.
transferable. That's it. Unless he knows the password, which it's there for him to take. But
Yeah.
it's not the point. It's better having it on your account because then you're speaking to your friends. I mean, you don't want to log on 5 years after your death and then everybody's pinging. I thought you were dead. Your son's getting these messages from mates of yours from online.
You know what amazes me? My dad sadly passed away in 2000 and when did he die? 2013. He had or has well, he had yeah a YouTube channel, and it was just he uploaded family videos. I don't know why he put them on YouTube, but he uploaded videos of us in the 80s and all that.
Yeah.
And do you know that YouTube channel's still there? My dad's been dead since for
Wow.
12 years, so
Yeah.
he's never obviously logged into it. I've not got the password for it or anything, but it's still there. So
That's good.
yeah, it's interesting. It's still there. I thought you'd say, well, nobody's activated this account in the last couple of
It
years.
will probably happen at some point. They'll
Yeah, it'll
reevaluate
just
their.
go.
Yeah, and then it'll just go, and then it disappears into the ether, and that's it. Sad.
It is. Anyway, listen, Gordon, we'll crack on with the nice and
Mm-hmm.
nasty. The idea behind it. I'm not
Format.
going to
Yeah.
explain it because everybody has listened to these before. Yeah, pick 3 games to take to the desert island. These are These are the only games you will ever get to play ever again. You can pick anything. I don't know. I'm telling you this because you've already made your choices, but yeah, it can be across any system, arcade. It can be online, whatever. And then
Mhm.
I'll also ask you to pick 3 games that I want you to remove from history for whatever reason. So we'll start off light-hearted and fun and fluffy and go for game number 1 of a game you would take to said island.
Okay, this goes back to the Atari VCS or 2600. I did call it the VCS as well back in the day, different from that. It wasn't really until the advent of the internet now where I was calling it different because that's how it was
Yeah.
marketed and advertised in the UK as the VCS. So this is this borrowed oil rig, surrogate father console that my brother borrowed. And so in the arcades, you're playing the arcade games, and predominantly they're shooters at this point. They're space shooters, aren't they? But it'd be Space Invaders, Defender, Galaga, Asteroids, Moon Patrol, all that. It's all on a theme. These
Mhm.
pesky aliens, right? It was kind of the same then on Atari. You had, the clones. Okay, you had Pac-Man, that's not a shooter, but you had that. You had Space Invaders, you had Yar's Revenge, great game, But I was just getting a bit fed up of shooters. I'm not the biggest fan of gun games in general, and nothing to do with a Mary Whitehouse thing here. This is just my general feeling because something changed my mind, and this was adventure. Right now, when I saw this game, brother was out playing football with his pals, and there it is lying there. And they never fired us up and played it. They weren't interested in it. They were loving the quick fix arcade games. So I put, what's this game? Adventure. Okay. Puts the cartridge in, fires up, and there you are, this little cube fella just outside a castle, portcullis shut down or whatever, and you have to find the golden chalice. And the whole idea of exploring this, albeit blocky and rudimentary labyrinth of about 30 rooms or something, different game modes that makes it harder. But you played the first skill level as you did every time on any Atari game, didn't you? Just to get the hang of the game. And you got the sword, and there was the right, I've got the sword, what do I do? And you move into the room, and then there's this dragon, one of the free dragons, the free coloured dragons, just with a penchant towards you. It's like, oh, he's coming towards me. And you're panicking, moving about, and it's like, oh, and he probably kills you the first time because you got the sword sticking at your arsehole rather than your front or something. You know what I mean? So then you get the hang of the game, and it's like, right, so what do I do here? And then there's that pesky bat flying about that steals things off you, or you pick up the bridge that you can make shortcuts over the maze, which you found the like referred to in Ready Player One book film as well as a reference to the first video game Easter egg of the author's name, Warren Robinett, because Atari didn't credit their authors back in that day. Yeah. So you had that sneaked, it's a little bit extra memory. I'll just make a hidden room. If you use the bridge to access that hidden room, then you can get it. But ultimately, Alan, it blew me away because I then realised there was more to video games than just mindless shooting. I have wanderlust anyway. I love exploring. When I'm out walks, I go, oh, what's over this hill? I'm like, oh, over there. I'm a nosy bugger that way. I've always had that. I love walking and exploring places I've never been. And this game gave me that. I didn't know this kind of thing existed in that way. So it brought me into a new realm, a new world, and I was smitten. And I was devastated when eventually they had sold it to get the next computer, and it was no longer. And my most favorite game at this point was gone, and I couldn't access it until years later. I bought an Atari at a car boot sale. Someone was selling a job lot. I said, yes! and I pretty much stuck and played that just to recapture that feel. And I know that feeling the game gave me, and it was many years later till another game gave that vibe, but that was there with it was total change gaming for me.
So is it a game that you would take because it just you still enjoy playing it, and it takes you right back to that 1982, whatever it was, in your bedroom or whatever.
It's for nostalgic purposes that if you're bored on this desert island, it captures a memory and a feel, a mindfulness of what it was like back then. I'm bringing my youth with me with this.
So game. Fair to say that would be one of your wow moments then. Yeah,
it was hugely wow. It was like it was such a rush, to be honest. I can't put it into words how I felt playing this, and except I was in complete and utter awe that a game could do this. The same feeling that when you saw Star Wars for the first time as a kid, it changed movies forever for you. That was the same thing with that.
Yeah. Well, I can partially relate to that because I had my Commodore 64, and then I got into a group of friends, and Paul and James had an Atari 800, but they also had an Atari 2600, and they went, "Oh, do you want to borrow it?" Because it was in a bag, it was in a polythene bag under their bed. I went, "Oh yeah, I'll get it." And I got it home, and it was a bit of a kind of like a bit of a novelty, Space Invaders. It looked shite compared to what I was playing. And I put this cartridge in Adventure, and I'm like, God, this is crap. And as you see, you're quite literally you're moving the ball from Pong. I mean, that's exactly what it is.
Yeah,
you're moving the ball from Pong, and you see you go through, and you're in a maze, and and then you pick up the sword, which is just like an
An
arrow
arrow,
pointing,
an
an
arrow,
arrow
yeah.
pointing left. And then you get, well, I thought it was, everybody makes the same mistake as me. You get attacked with this duck, which apparently is a dragon.
Mhm.
I think it's a duck. But yeah, when you die, it kind of goes.
I hate that duck.
It kind of, when you stab it, it kind of goes, and it kind of
Yeah.
withers, and it kind of,
Yes.
it's like a spider when you kill it. It goes.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
thing kind of falls and it bends in, and without a shadow of a lie, without a word of a lie, I, I, I sat up, and I think I pulled an all nighter, and I sat and played Adventure until I completed it.
Mhm.
It was like shit. It's like the shittiest graphics, but there was just something about that. And
Mhm.
I'm the opposite of you. I don't have any game that requires exploring like your Zeldas and your
Mhm.
Fallout 4s and all that, and even like Grand Theft Autos and that. It's just I can't be bothered. I'd love to play them, but I just lose interest. I've not got the patience to kind of stick with them. So Adventure was probably the first and only kind of adventure game that I ever completed. It was like my first and last. But Barry White
Probably
there.
is the first
Yeah.
game I ever equally completed because I was
Hmm.
it's such an I would never complete an arcade game. Well, they're not designed to be completed, and
Yeah.
so yeah, this was the first game. So it was
Yeah.
a proud moment. I even completed a game. Hey, look at me! I'm a grown up now. Yeah.
So no, you know what? Yeah, I'm totally with you. Great, great,
Mm.
great choice.
Mhm.
Fantastic choice. Was there different levels been it? Could you
Yeah,
increase the difficulty? Yeah.
yeah. Expanded the maze, and even on skill level 3, the maze was invisible, so you had to memorize that. Right, it was in the dark. Right, so but I played it that much. You just up like I don't know why I closed my eyes to controlling the invisible maze just to map it. It's like left, up, right, down to get it, and it's played it that much that it was. But I didn't get bored as a kid. It was
Yeah.
like I want to play it again. I want to play it
Yeah.
again. It gave me such a thrill. It was unbelievable.
Yeah. When did you last play it?
Would you? Oh, because the Atari 50 collection,
Oh
the
yeah, yeah,
anniversary thing
yeah,
came
yeah.
out.
Yeah.
So I actually fired that up then and had a good
Mhm.
go of it. And yeah, it's hard in many ways because it is very very basic graphics, but pretty much the Atari suffers that on all their back catalogue. Truth be told,
Mhm.
but the the fun was
Still
still
got it.
there.
Yeah.
It
Let's.
gave me it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've always said that a good game is a good game.
Hmm.
You
Yeah.
don't. Yeah. So some games. I mean, there's certain games. There's certain games that in the C64 that I used to love, and then I've gone back and I thought, it's a bit shit. I'll play it for 10 seconds, but then there's other games. I mean, like Beam Rider by Activision.
Mm.
I
Hmm.
remember that was on Softaid, and I loaded it
Hmm.
up and I thought, God, look at this is abysmal. And then I
Hmm.
started playing it, and then next thing I knew, it was like I'm sitting in complete darkness in my bedroom. And I'm still playing Beam Rider, and it's still a game that even now I will put on and
Good
just
game. Yeah.
switch the
Yeah.
lights off, turn the sound up, and
Hmm.
draws you in. So yeah, great choice.
Cool. So what you want
Game number
now?
two.
Number 2 then. This is on the ZX Spectrum then. Many great moments on the Spectrum, but this is a game I fire up to this day. Yeah, I play it all the time. It is my most favourite game of all time this time round, okay? And I can't not take this to the desert island with me because I'll miss it because I fire up and I start from the beginning and get as much enjoyment out of it. And that's Avalon by Steve Turner.
Hmm.
It's yet again probably one not of your genre. It's an RPG, early RPG where you control a wizard or his astral projection because he's a bit of a chicken shit. He's not going into these labyrinths. I'm going to send just a mindful spirit into there. If I get killed,
He's on a kind of like a carpet. He glides, doesn't he? Kind of
I
thing. Yeah,
glides. He
yeah,
just
yeah,
floats
yeah,
in.
yeah.
The only reason that was done is because limitation in the memory. If I needed animation frames to walk, that would take up more memory. So
Ah,
the
right, right,
Steve
right,
Turner
right.
created this backstory to fill in for the lack of graphics, so he's just sitting meditating like a so what was so special about this one, right? So right, to go back a little bit, as a Christmas present from my grandmother a few years prior, I got an accordion, was sent to accordion lessons playing Tudor music. And you remember Thingamajig on the Hogmanay, right? And all that pish, right?
Some
It was like,
dancing. Jesus.
I mean, for any of your listeners that don't recall that, it's probably because it was Scottish television. They just filmed it in a random barn in the back of Kelty or something like that, didn't they? And it was just a rubbish. And here we're celebrating Hogmanay, and this is Mary from the local pet store, and she's off going to head off the dance for husband Tam here, and he works in the pit. It's like, shit. It was just gosh. Anyway, so I hated playing this accordion, and so sadly she passed away, and I gave it a bit of time. I was like, I don't need to go for lessons anymore, and I plucked up the courage to ask my parents, "Can I sell this?" And I said, "Aye." So I got 40 quid for it, right? And I was allowed to spend it on Spectrum games, so I went down to John Menzies and Avalon amongst the. I stared because it was a clamshell cover and the artwork and the graphics photo screenshot.
Was it Hewson that did that one? Was it?
Hewson, yeah, that's right. Hewson Consultants, as they were
that's right,
known
it was
beforehand,
yeah.
That's right. So took it home. It was a Friday night. Gobbled down tea, right upstairs, fired this game up, and I was just sucked into it. It was, apart from your 2D sprite, everything else is wireframe graphics that moved. The room moved around rather than you, if you want, right? And you could bounce into the door.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It was visually stunning. Massive game. What I liked about it was the sense of progression. So once you found the keys and killed the creatures in the particular dungeon, figured out how the hell to get out of it. There could be a rock and you need to get something to move a rock, and you had a little Casper the Ghost wisp that you found. It went into your rucksack and picked out your objects that you found. There was weird things that looked like toilet plungers, and I was like, what the hell am I doing with that? Chuck that away. And but you got out and you went on to a different dungeon, and the hue would change, just to give you that sense. The colours would change from magenta to cyan or something like that, and then it'd be the kingdom of the mines of dwarfs, or into the realms of chaos, and names like that of the dungeons. So it'd be skeletal warriors, elves, dark elves, dwarfs, and things that look like the Gamorrean guards from Return of the Jedi as well, with the visors with the plate going down the bridge of the nose. Yeah. And it followed you. That's what was exciting about it. That even if you left the room, it was like the crisp. Remember the Smith's Square crisps where
the marching,
right? Aye. You heard them, and it instilled fear in you. This game, you had to get 2 rooms ahead. Off them before they didn't know which direction you went, and that was so exciting about that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So it was a fiddly game where you had to. There was no pause in the game, okay? Well, you could pause the game, but what I meant was to do your actions, you had to go into a menu and go through the scrolls that you had found to do the spells, like missile or freeze. Freeze would freeze the baddies, would and they stopped just as they were about to get to you. So it was like frantically scrolling through the list. Where is it? Where's freeze? Shit, they're coming towards me. And you'd make all manner of mistakes. But it was a compelling game. It took me many years to actually complete, because it's quite difficult. And still yet I make mistakes or forget things yet. How did I do that bit again? Because I leave it a good chunk of time before I go back and play it again. But every year I go through and play this game. This is, you hear some people say they go through and read Lord of the Rings once a year or something.
Yeah.
This is my game that does that. So that has got to come to the island with me.
You revisit it. Did that appear on the Spectrum? Did that appear on the new incarnation? Yes. It did. Aye. Yeah, it's as you say. I think it was. It wasn't a game. Obviously, because I was a C64 guy, I wasn't really interested in. If a game wasn't on my system, I wasn't interested. So Avalon wasn't on the C64. So I wasn't interested in it, but I am aware of the game. I've obviously watched Steve Turner's appeared on Bedrooms to Billions and all that kind of stuff. Spoke about the.
Yes.
It sounds to me like it's quite quite. It had some kind of early AI. You're talking about like the guards would follow you and they would kind of chase you.
Yeah. That
There's a
that
game.
feeling of pursuit was something else.
There's a game that's I suppose it's not massively different on the C64. It was a really early game called Castle Wolfenstein, which
Mm-hmm.
incidentally did actually inspire John Romero to go and do
Yep.
3D Wolfenstein and Doom and whatever. But yeah, this was a game that came out in 1983. It came out for the Atari, and you play the part of a little soldier trapped in Castle Wolfenstein, and you're chased with the Nazis. And it's
Mm-hmm.
just exactly you get chased, and you can change. You can put you can if you shoot a guard, you can put his uniform on so they can't see and all that. And it was just this. Yeah, it was really basic graphics, but just the dynamics and the amount of kind of content in it was fantastic. So no, I totally get you. And when I do these podcasts, I'm always thinking I need to go and play that game now because I mean. And I said that to I can't remember I was saying that to somebody recently. I said this is 31. I've done 31 of these, so there has been 31 times 6. Well, there's been 90. No, what's 31 times 3? 93?
Mm-hmm.
No, is it
93.
31 times? Yeah, 93. There is
93
93.
good games and 93 shite
Nine,
games for you to play.
yeah, and the people that I've spoke to generally are all people. Collectively, there's probably about I don't know. There must be about 2,000 gaming years. You've been playing games for a long time, and you're telling me you're picking sort of 3 insanely good games. So there's 93 brilliant games that you need to look at. Not to say that every single one is going to be one. Just so interesting. I'm sure Adventure has been picked to somebody else. I can't remember who it was. But anyway, yeah, great, fantastic second choice.
Cool. Right.
So
Well,
yeah,
my
game number
third
4.
one, jumping ahead a little bit, this is on the PlayStation 1 now. So you did ask me earlier, was there a point that I gave up gaming? I think I was almost ready to give up gaming, almost at the PlayStation 1 point, was because, as I said, my Amiga had died, and one for holding on to my tech because I was getting enough out of that. The kind of games I wanted to play, I was enjoying it, and only had the SNES, and it comes with a particular subset in Nintendo-like games. Excuse me, clear my throat. So, I was just getting a bit fed up because things were getting just a bit samey then. And then I saw Tomb Raider, the original Tomb Raider, on the PlayStation 1. And my cotton socks were completely blown. And it was my second proper wow moment, the same feel that Adventure gave me all those years prior. Didn't think I'd get that same feeling again. How visually impressive that game looked, how it played, the presentation values, the production of it, the music, the atmosphere. It completely sucked you into that game. That any suspension of disbelief was gone. You were in that game with Lara Croft, and especially that opening cave level. Even though there are better levels, the T-Rex moment. Oh my God! When the big T-Rex came, right? You shat yourself. I mean, because the limitation of draw distance was in that, it actually added somewhat to the atmosphere of the game that you didn't see what was coming up as you walked along. So you find this little opening in that cave in level 3. You go through and it opens up again, and there's waterfalls. And oh wow, you think you've found a hidden area. Oh, I wonder if Warren Robinette's name's going to be in here. And all of a sudden, this T-Rex comes lunging towards you, and yet again, the fear, the pursuit, you're jumping, making all the mistakes, drawing out the wrong guns and somersaulting, and brilliant, big game. Very diverse levels taking you through a globe-trotting adventure. None of them let down. It was highly exciting from start to finish, and yet again, a game I regularly fire up and play from start to finish. And don't lose any of the thrill of it.
Mm-hmm. And is it the original PlayStation one that you'll play? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I bought the anniversary, no, the anniversary,
Mm,
the remastered versions. They're excellent. So the reason I like it on the PlayStation as well, instead of playing it on something like the Mist or original hardware, you get that terrible screen wobble, right? That happens on that cursed many of the PlayStation games, just the way it handled the polygons. But on
mm,
the emulator DuckStation, it fixes that, it upscales, and I love modern emulators that can do that. You know,
yeah,
it lets you see it in the same eyes as how you saw it 20 plus years ago,
yeah.
right? That's all it does. It doesn't enhance it anymore beyond that. It's still the same mechanics and everything else, but just visually, because you don't have a small 14-inch CRT anymore or whatnot, it just like, wow, this is good. So, I mean, no matter how you play it, it's still a great game to go back and play.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean that was a game. I went to Curry's in Livingston Centre. And I remember buying it. I think did it come out for the Sega Saturn first?
Saturn as well,
I
yeah.
think it did. Aye, aye.
Was
Yeah,
it first? Don't I think
something
actually it was
Niggles made
maybe
it. Did?
I think it was actually later for the Saturn,
Was it?
slightly later. Yeah, because it was a.
Yeah.
I mean, it didn't play as good on the Saturn. It was a bit slower
And
and
that was more it was better for 2D and
for
the
2D.
play.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
right. Yeah.
PlayStation was more 3D. But no, I bought it, and yeah, like yourself, it was. I mean, games up till that point, um, the systems that games ran on just they didn't have the kind of oomph or the horsepower to do something like that. So yeah, we're talking about like most games we played were 2 dimensional and whatever it
Mm,
was, and suddenly here's a game where you're they were like it was beautiful. You're going into a cavern, you've got you see waterfalls, and it's like wow. And then you've got this again enormous dinosaur appearing out of nowhere, and so yeah, it was. Whilst I've looked at the game since then, and it's a weird one. I don't have really. It's a weird thing. I don't have a lot of nostalgia for the PlayStation, even though I played the PlayStation for probably 5 years.
mm.
I think part of that was down to because I used to go to Ingliston Market and get games. We'd get like 20 new games every month, every week, and
You're not appreciating
no,
what you had then yet.
you had thousands of games. You never played any of them. So I don't feel I don't think like the PlayStation has aged particularly well because it was the first generation
Yes.
of this massive leap from polygons and all that.
Hmm.
But yeah, I totally get it. It was a monumental game. It was just it was it was like a showstopper. It really was.
Hmm.
I suppose it was kind of it was to video games what Star Wars was to like special effects and films. It's like holy shit,
Yeah.
incredible, incredible. So no, listen, three great games. I can, but apart and forming, obviously you've gone for you like your exploration type things. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. That is my. It's a must for me. That's why I like what I more predominantly play in this day and age is Metroidvania games, simply because that's what they offer. It's
Hmm.
I get absorbed in them. I forget real world problems. It's my go-to. I just enjoy it with a smile. Well, this is just fantastic. I just melt away and feel the game.
Yeah, yeah. Awesome. Anyway, sorry, yeah, we're getting quite happy at the moment, but I'm going to have to take the mood down a wee bit. We're going to start opening some old wounds, and
Oh,
yeah, I don't really
yes.
like this part of the podcast. I do really, but anyway, yeah. Well, actually, think about it. This is quite a therapeutic thing I'm asking you to do. There's obviously been games that you've come across in your life that were shit, that they were
Hmm.
overpriced, were far too short, too hard, annoying. You just thought they were crap, or it led on to a genre of game that you just don't like. And so this is your opportunity to erase three games from history.
Good.
So yeah,
Gladly.
go for it.
Right, we're going to go back to 1984 first of all, and this will be on the ZX Spectrum, okay? Now, this was a game I saw advertised in big full colour spreads in magazines like Sinclair User and that really showed off this game's graphics. It looked gorgeous, huge, bright visual graphics. It just looked stunning, like nothing else you had played on the spectrum at that point. You know, written by Chris Carey as well, who done a shitload of games for Gremlin Graphics, including Alfie Disney Monte, Avenger, Bounder, Footballer of the Year, Future Night. You know, we're talking. He moved on to a pedigree of games at that point,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But before that, he worked for a software house called Thor Games. I am Thor, okay? And he released a trilogy of awful games, and the first one of them was Jack and the Beanstalk, right? Now, the,
Yeah.
the age-old tale of everybody loves a bit Jack and the Beanstalk story. It's a classic, probably instilled by our mothers reading to us the tale at bedtime and seeing many a TV or movie or cartoon iteration. It's steeped in our childhood, isn't it, this tale? So it is the game where you play Jack, you have to go up the beanstalk, you know, get the golden harp and get the hell back down again. Oh my God. How wrong could a game go? So I saved up my hard-earned pocket money. We were going on a day trip to Edinburgh on the train and went into John Menzies and Princess Street. Remember the big John
Yeah,
Menzies
that
there?
was
That
my
was a
favourite. Yep, yep.
yeah, lots of games on display
You
there
went
for all
downstairs, you
systems.
went down the stairs,
That's
and
right.
down the stairs, you got to wee landing, and I always remember they had the Brothers in Arms with Dire Straits. That was always on the wall, and then you turned around and went further down.
That's right.
Yeah,
Wow,
yeah.
forgot about that. Cool, nice memory.
Or was that, wait a minute, or was there was the escalator? You went in and you went down the escalator, and as you got to the bottom, you had all these games that you can see that I've got there. All these you can't see them. All these kind of Astro Wars and that type games. They
Yeah,
had a big
the
wall of
VFD
them as
games.
well.
Yeah, yeah, brilliant.
Yeah,
It was a mecca because it was the biggest one. It was a
it
hub
was.
for not like your local one, you know, down Leaven High Street here that they only dedicate a small amount of space to it. So
If
these were
anyone
you were
wants to
got
know what it looks like, just watch Train Spotting. When you see Spud and Renton running away, you'll see
that's
John
right.
Menzies. Yeah,
That's right. That's right. So this game is a disaster from start to finish. Yeah, the color graphics are there, right? It still looks like the still images, but still images only give you so much of the story, don't you? This game has the worst collision detection in the history of mankind. Getting up that frickin' beanstalk took me about 2 years, right? Just to get up that 1 pixel wrong left or 1 pixel wrong right. It was and you plummet to your death, life lost, back to the start, rinse and repeat. And not only that, there's birds flying about to contend with and a stupid bouncing spider at the bottom. But if you're lucky enough to get past that in the first place to get up the freaking beanstalk. Then the second level was like the brickworks of the castle or something. And you had to get in between the bricks with moving insects again. Impossibly hard to get across. That was just crap. Try to think what the next. There wasn't many screens. That's why they made the game hard. There's only like 5 levels on the game. Then there's the mantelpiece and fireplace you have to get up. So as a kind of opposite Professor Yaffle from Bagpuss to get up back the way to get the golden bird out the cage. And then eventually the giant would chase you and you had to get back down, get the axe, chop the beanstalk and eventually complete. I had to sit one day. I remember it one Sunday. It's probably the most free time. Get to bring it downstairs and play on the colour TV rather than black and white to appreciate the visuals. I put a poke in the game for Infinite Lives, and it took me from morning till tea time to actually complete the game. Countless, and I persevered and persevered, and I've never went back to the game apart from when we did we covered gaming turkeys and games that pissed us off on the RGDS podcast, and I covered the game there, but I only briefly played it because the memory of my wasted money on this turd is too painful yet.
yeah. I'm aware of the game. I remember trying to play it in an emulator. It was as you say, the graphics. I'm sure it was one of these games that had quite it featured in adverts a lot in magazines. I can remember you mentioned the brickwork, and I can remember, and it looked quite
Yeah.
nice for a Spectrum game. It was quite colourful, and I think not just that game, but there was back then there was quite a number of games that, as you say, probably they were very very short. I mean, if you put like I don't know, turned off like sprite detection,
Aye,
you would complete that.
immunity. That's it. Finished in a couple of minutes.
Yeah, you would finish in like 2 minutes. I mean, it was so short. So the way they had to stop people completing it and trying to get money for value for money, they would make it insanely difficult.
Mhm.
And there's a number of games like that. I mean, I could name a number of games for the Commodore 64 that were like that, that were just ridiculously hard.
Well, the
Uh,
original Monty Mole version on the Commodore is a prime
aye,
example of a brutally hard game that,
yeah,
well, it's nothing like the original Spectrum version. Good for it, but it's more a blagger type
aye,
game, isn't it? And that
that's
that was
yeah,
impossible. It was
aye.
just frustrating.
Hey, there's a yeah, like I said, I could name. There's quite a few games that were just. There's one game that is quite funny. It's quite synonymous. My YouTube channel called China Miner. It's a platform kind of a la Manic Miner, and I remember talking about it and saying, "Oh, this game is absolutely impossible." And I started playing it when I do that. I do a sort of live stream every Sunday. I started playing it, and it always became the last game that I got to play. And
Mhm.
it took me probably, I don't know, it took me maybe about couple of months before I eventually completed level one. If I was to put it on now, I could probably get to like level 6 because I've played it that much, and you just have to learn. You've got to learn exactly at what
Aye,
point, what pixel do you jump, and all this kind of stuff. You know,
aye,
it's
aye.
and but yeah, I would even now I would say I would gladly put my mortgage and say to anybody, you play that, you have 5 games of that, I'll guarantee you will not get off level one because it was
Mhm.
so insanely difficult. And yeah, that was obviously exactly the same as that. So was it the collision detection unfair? Like, was it not accurate, or was it like literally one pixel, boom, dead?
Yeah, I suppose you could class it as that. You didn't know what would kill you. It was a limitation. So the vine that you went up in the beanstalk was all the one color. Okay, it was quite wide. Okay, but if you just went too much left on it, you just died, even though
You
you were
didn't
still on the
really know.
vine.
Yeah,
Yeah. So
yeah.
the whatever you were colliding with was the same color. There was just a very invisible line that you must stick to all the way up, and it was the same right through the game. It was you had to be in a precise place, but you didn't know. It was a trial and error in a
Aye,
worse way than, say, Dragon's Lair or something, right? Because you couldn't memorize that. It was too much margin for error. That's the trouble.
aye.
Of
So if you did a Codemasters thing where Richard Darling would proclaim that the game BMX Simulator that he wrote is fantastic, you would call bastard hard. That's pretty much describe Jack and the Beanstalk. Yeah, it's just
yes,
unfair. It's
yes. With a terrible, I mean, I know the Spectrum is not renowned. Well, the ZX, the 48K, the 128K, the way the AI chip has
yeah.
excellent music on it. But on the 48K, in-game tunes often grated, like Manic Miner or Technician Ted, things like that. This had English Country Garden playing in a terrible low, the lowest octave ever. Oh, it was like, oh my god, turn it off now. It just it bled your bloody ears as well. So it was like this game, playing this game was like having a bout of diarrhea that wouldn't go away. Awful.
But he did fortunately redeem himself and make some better games.
Yes. So
Yeah,
we all had
yeah,
to but
yeah.
he made 3 of these games. Then there was the house that
Ah,
Jack built, and then the Giant's Revenge. So this
oh
was a
God.
trilogy of infuriatingly frustrating games. So people must have bought them, So I mean, it's all in the marketing. That's what it comes down to. They look good and
Yeah.
big full page spreads, and probably decent strategic shelf places in such game shops
Yeah,
you went
yeah.
to. So
That's the thing, though. I think any games back then that had good graphics sold because people would look at it. The magazines would want to print adverts because it looked really really nice, and you'd
Mhm.
go into John Menzies and you'd pick up you'd pick up a cassette tape and you'd look at, like, I don't know, uh, adventure and go, look at the graphics, they're shit. Oh, bloody hell, look at the graphics in this Jack and the Beanstalk. I'll buy that because
Mhm.
obviously good graphics means it's going to be a good game, or
Yeah,
so we
but
thought.
nope, not at all. Oh,
Yeah, I
painful.
think so. Obviously, removing that one would remove the other two. So yeah, you've done us a huge favour.
Okay,
Fantastic.
right. On to my next one. Maybe controversial, maybe not. It's got its critics. And this is on the GameCube, right? And now you're wondering what am I going to choose here? I'm going to go down the disappointment route of Mario Sunshine,
I was
right?
thinking that game.
Now, I'm a huge Mario fan. Loved Mario from day one, right? I think I totally fell in love, certainly with more than any other Mario game, Super Mario World, and its time. Rinsed that game, found every secret, 100%ed everything. It was just fantastic. Same with Yoshi's Island on the SNES, loved it. Then, of course, we got the wonderful Mario 64 on the N64. It changed 3D platforming game forever. It's a very
Mm-hmm.
responsible game for that. So when this was announced on the GameCube with better graphics and the hope that 3D games were getting a bit better, that this was a no-brainer. Of course you're going to, in the magazine reviews, most of the critics loved it. So you bought this game. And I was just underwhelmed right from the beginning. The over saturation and bloom pisses my eyes off for starters in it. The long intro really annoys me. It's like just I
The
want to skip that
plane or
crap.
something. Aye,
It's like
aye,
come on, for goodness sake! I just want to play the
aye,
pigging game. But to be only themed on a desert island or tropical nation was disappointing because part of Mario, part of what
aye.
I want, as you know, in games is the feeling of getting to new places. They look different.
Yeah.
You want a snow level, you want a lava level. This game didn't provide it in the same way. There was just too much frigging water,
Mm,
and they
mm,
tried to give you retro levels that were like a 3D variant of old Mario, but it didn't. It was just they were frustratingly hard. The camera. What did they do with the
yeah.
camera in that game? That was the biggest bugbear. Was
Mhm.
Mario 64 done it better? That's commended for being an early iteration 3D game that actually pretty much got the camera good, whereas most
Yeah.
3D games were failing at that point. We've
Mhm.
moved on to this next generation, and it didn't master it. There was dead walls, dead zones, couldn't move the camera the way you wanted it, so you just died. And then controlling that annoying water thing on your back, just getting to see with that.
Oh,
That
aye,
that
aye,
was
aye, aye, yeah, yeah.
yeah. So it just frustrated me and didn't deliver a wholesome Mario game that I wanted out of Mario, and every other thing that came out since, even Mario Odyssey on the Switch, I've thoroughly enjoyed.
Yeah.
And I go back to this one every so often and go, I'm I'm going to I'm going to play this again and see if I like it now. And this is the only Mario game I've never completed or pretty much maxed because that's the kind of focus I put in a Mario game. So there's something wrong if I'm not dedicating that kind of time into this game, and it just annoys me. And you know what annoys me more than anything else on this one is when you get the little oil slick Mario that you have to
Yeah,
capture on every
yeah.
level, and I hate it. He always just gets away in the camera angles, and you're like, for fuck's sake, I'm going to fucking kill
So
him. And
you could chase them
you,
at the beginning, aye,
you
aye.
just rage quit the game so
Yeah.
many times with this, and it's not an enjoyable experience. They just didn't do Mario right with this game.
Mm. I think yeah, I've played Mario Sunshine quite a lot. As my daughter was getting older, we got to a point where we'd like play it together and we'd take turns, and yeah, we really we thought let's try and complete Mario Sunshine, and it just became we ended up like kind of rage quitting. It just became frustrating, as you say, the camera angles and what have
Mhm.
you. It's probably the first. I'm not a huge fan of Mario games, if I'm being honest, but it's probably the only Mario game that was probably didn't get great reviews because I do remember at the time, even like Edge magazine and all these they would say, "Oh, fantastic! Look at the visuals," blah, 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 but the camera's a bit broken. Whereas every game that had come out before then, and every game that pretty much came out after it, Mario wise, Nintendo absolutely nailed it. But yeah, it's just I think apart from lacking the variety that you were talking about, the controls were a bit broken, which isn't something Nintendo do. They don't do very often. I always think that out of any of these video game companies, I think Nintendo, whether you like the games or not, they nail a game. You take something like Splatoon or any of their like big games.
Their IPs, they get right.
Oh, I mean, Mario Kart 8. It's a flawless game. I mean, we were playing it on the Switch a couple of days ago, me and my daughter, and it's beautiful to look at. It's perfect, and yeah, they seem to drop the ball with Mario Sunshine. And I think it is generally sort of regarded as the sort of the broken Mario game. Did they not bring it out? Yeah, in fact, I think I've got it on the Switch. Did I? I think they brought out a version. Did you not get like a two?
There's a trilogy. There's a trilogy thing. Yes,
I've never actually loaded it right enough, but did they fix it?
I just went right into Mario Galaxy. I enjoyed that because that's divine.
They were on the Wii. These two, yeah. So did Mario Sunshine come out for the? Did they package that as part of the Switch thing? Then did they?
I'm trying. I don't think they did. What's on that trilogy pack? I've got it there. 2 seconds. I'm just going to actually have a look because it's bugging me now.
Yeah, maybe they fixed it.
Yeah, it's on it, and I've never played it, and it shows you how much attention I've paid. So you've got Mario 64, Mario Sunshine, and Mario Galaxy, and I've just played games 1 and 3 and never even bothered firing.
You've never tried it. It'd be interesting. It'd be interesting if you tried it just to see if they've. I mean, what I think have they kind of upscaled it? Is it been
upscaled? Rewritten? That's it.
Is that all it is? So it's how do you think it'll control? Do you think it'll?
Oh, I think it's probably more suited for the GameCube controller, to be honest, and not having that and these small buttons on the Switch, I think it'll be more frustrating. So I ain't going there, not at all.
Yeah.
I'll stick that. But well, it says featuring updated HD graphics and enhanced controls, but it doesn't say for what game they've done that for.
Interesting they've included that actually. Because I say that is generally regarded as a sort of like the black sheep of the family. It's a Nintendo game nobody really talks about as far as Mario games go. And it's interesting that they've actually chosen to package that. Interesting. If anybody happens to know if did they change Mario Sunshine for the Switch and make it a better game? If you know, put your comments down below. Okay, excellent. Yeah, nothing wrong with that. So right, you've stopped me wanting to play it again because every now and again we go in. My daughter and I will go in and play a game, and then we'll forget about it, and then we'll go back in again. But so it never gets away from the sort of desert island sunshine theme as it's stuck in.
That's it all the way through, and that's one of its biggest failings.
Nah. Excellent. Right, and the final game of shame. I don't want to put you under any pressure at all, Gordon, but this recording thing that I use, I think only because it went. I was paying, was it $12.99 a month, and then they put it up to £45 a month.
Oh, cheeky! They've done it on all of the ones. We're the same for our. Yeah,
ridiculous. So
I'll be quick. I'm like, I'll be quick.
Bollocks to that. So I think it stops recording after 2 hours. So it's 1:50 and 51 seconds.
Ah, that's fine. I can get this in here.
Good stuff.
Right. So this one might be predictable for you if you've watched where my gaming trends have been at. Okay, this will upset many people because this is a game I don't give a shit about. I don't like the genre. Never have. Never will. And this one pretty much started the rage, even though it's not the first game of the genre, and that is Doom. Can't stand it. Don't like first-person shooters. It bores me. Absolutely. Run about with a gun in a maze. Shoot somebody else. Move on. Shoot. No, thank you. Sorry. And I know people love even the new boomer shooters that are all the rage. Oh, no. Just don't give me them. The only first-person shooter I enjoyed is what I call as Half-Life because there's a story. There's right. If you give me that in a game, so like Thief. the Thief series as well, right? Love
Mm-hmm.
them. But in terms of gun first person shooters like that, absolutely, it's boring. Why you enjoy this? Eh? You like Doom?
Yeah, I did. I must admit, I did. I played.
Yeah.
I loved Doom. I loved playing the original Doom, Doom 2, whatever, Ultimate Doom. But then the thing for me, and somebody else did pick that game because they said it led on to online gaming, which they just think they don't like.
Mm.
But yeah, I mean, Doom has since led on to every game that you get on the PlayStation 5 or Xbox Series X is based on Doom.
Hmm.
And it's just it's
It's
become
a
a
genre that
stale.
hasn't been able to
Yeah,
evolve out its own
yeah,
trappings, right? It's still
yeah,
predominantly the same thing. You run
yeah.
about with a gun and shoot and survive and move on to a harder level. Um, the best arena shooter in the world is Robotron, right? You don't need to play any other game if you want that kind
Yeah,
of thrill. Twin stick mayhem, yes,
yeah,
please.
yeah,
I'll
yeah,
have that
yeah.
any day, but not this. I respect its place in gaming history, of course I do. Um, I respect that it has inspired many games, and of course it is, and many people like that. But then, like one of your other um, guests on the show have said, then yeah, I never thought of it from that perspective. It's led on to a thing I'm not interested in is online shooting and getting your arse handed to you in a plate by a 15-year-old because he has the time to spend a gazillion hours a week on the game. Now, you're never going to compete with people like that. I've tried PUBG
I
and
was,
and, and things like
yeah.
that, and it's like,
I
just
think
doesn't
it
work.
was. I think it was Andy Roberts, who is of Thalas Software. He was
Mhm,
on two podcasts ago, and he was
mhm.
talking about Fortnite, and he said that he thought he'd give it a go, and he said he thought he was doing great, and then suddenly, boom, and he gets taken out from like 2 miles away from some little snotty nosed 10-year-old sniping him, and he's like, "Ah, fuck this, I've had
See,
enough."
there's something unclean about a grown up playing Fortnite. It's like Jimmy Savile at a youth club or something. You know what I mean? It just doesn't feel right. You know what I mean?
I'll give you one. Obviously, we're conscious of time. One of my friends who I did, he took part in it. He works. I don't know. He's an engineer of some sort, and he had a group of apprentices in. And he said to them, he says, "Oh, you got any hobbies?" And one guy goes, "Oh, I'm into video games." And he's like, "Oh, video games? What is it you play? You play what?" He goes, "FIFA and COD."
Oh my
And he
god!
went, "Ah, they're not
Aye,
video games."
yeah,
Why they are? They're not. They're not video games. Call of Duty and FIFA. Shoot me now. If these are the only two games that were left, I'd start
yeah,
playing dominoes or something.
yeah. Absolutely. I'll just,
Yeah.
I'll just start. I'll start talking to the coconuts on the tree. It'd be more fun.
So is that? I mean, presumably you played Doom,
Of course, yeah, yeah.
but you just
I've
didn't. It
played at
just didn't
networks, I've played
gel.
LAN parties, and you
Yeah.
got somewhat of thrill in it, but the everybody was loving it, and I just went, I want to go back to my single player immersive games.
You know.
This isn't immersive, especially someone screaming to the left of me, yeah! It's like, oh no,
You know what? I
please.
always, I always argue. People say, "Oh, Doom's is video games have evolved. Look, we've now got Doom," and I says, "You take." I'm trying to think. Berserk. You
Yeah.
control a character. You press up, you fire. You shoot to the left. You shoot to the right. Move down. That's Doom. Up,
Mhm.
down, left, right, bro. It's just displayed in a different way, but it's
Right.
exactly the same as Doom. It's
Mhm.
exactly the same as Berserk. It's exactly the same as 99%
To
of
be
video
honest,
games.
I enjoyed Zybots better by Atari for that
Oh
kind of
yeah.
maze running shooting. That's a
Mm,
brilliant game with a very tactile controller.
mm-hmm.
Two-player mode and that's split screen, fantastic, but not that, not Doom. No, thank you.
Fantastic. Listen, we've got just literally 2 minutes to go, Gordon. So I'm going to say thank you very, very much for taking time to come on to my podcast.
Oh, my pleasure.
Keep
Sorry it took a bit longer there.
No, not a problem, not a problem. Keep doing what you're doing.
Very
Yeah,
kind.
I do. I mean, I do listen to the Retro Asylum podcast. I do listen to the RGD one. What I like about the RGD one, and don't take this as an insult, it's pretty. It's no frills. It's just you and a couple of the lads, just talking. You've not got a lot of like other stuff going on, and I think because your gaming history is pretty much a mirror image of my gaming history, and you say some things, and I'm like, oh, Chris, I remember that, and nobody else would know. So keep it going. Yeah. So thanks, Gordon, and finally, guys, thank you very much for listening. Until next time, as always, take care.